Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Naruttamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanachadakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kada Mayam Dadati Supadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Shashikam Sadvaitam Savadutam Arjana Sahitam Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Shabhanu Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Pacharine Nirvisheshunyavadi Paschata Desh Chalam Pangum Langade Grim Yatkrapata Mande Shri Gurum Dintaranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishvara Hari Om. Hare Krishna. Thank you all for joining. So we are discussing the 26th chapter of the 5th canto. We are partially through this chapter. The chapter is entitled A Description of the Hellish Planets. So this is often a very interesting topic for many people. In fact, very early in my life, it wasn't an ISKCON book, but it was a book by another famous spiritual teacher who had kind of extracted from the 28 hells from the Bhagavad. And I was quite surprised by what I read, because I realized that, oh, so many people are not aware. And whatever said and done, the reality of the world is that much of religion is actually motivated by fear. So description of hell is also you can say a negative impetus. Sometimes it's out of fear. If I don't follow, then I will be punished. That's not the ideal situation, but if nothing else works, at least that, because if you don't even have that, then we end up putting ourselves into a very dangerous situation. And we have discussed this multiple times. There are 4 motivations. There is fear, there is desire, there is duty, and there is love. Fear is what we just spoke about. Let me do something religious because I don't think there is any God, but just in case. So like an insurance policy. I don't think I will die, but just in case if I die. So many people are in that platform. Or they believe in God, but they think, much. better I. And that kind of fear is healthy. In fact, the whole purpose of creating pain in this world, pain itself is a warning that you are doing something wrong. Radhanath Maharaj mentions this many times in his classes. He says, for example, if we went, if our body had no pain sensation, if we went near fire and our body is burning and we don't feel any pain, we'll end up burning our limbs altogether and not realize. So pain is nature's system to indicate to us, whether it is physical pain, mental pain, whatever way, that there is some unnatural situation in some way. There is some deviation from the normal. So it is a sign, it's an indication. Some corrective action is necessary. So of course we are discussing about hells and all that, and like we discussed this multiple times, the idea of the Lord putting the living entities into this situation is not because there is a sadistic God sitting in heaven who is taking great pleasure in seeing us suffer. But this is like the last option. I tell you through scriptures, I tell you through saints, I tell you through your mother and father, I tell you through society, I tell you in all ways. You can see people around you doing wrong things and suffering. Still you don't want to listen. I give you token reactions. Still you don't want to learn. So when like in school, initially the teacher will give small punishment. But when you become a repeat and habitual offender, especially when a person starts acting with impunity. Impunity. You understand? Impunity means without fear of any punishment, without fear of any consequence. Then actually he puts himself into a very dangerous situation. Because if he continues on that path, he's just going to go lower and lower and lower. And we discussed this even in earlier chapters. I mean, hell is bad enough, but those who are so sinful, so criminal, we cannot say totally irreparable, but almost irreparable. Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna says, I cast them again and again low into the lower species where they suffer for unlimited period of time until there is some sense of awakening in them. Remember, we spoke about the Andhatamas region, which is outside the Bhumandal next to the Ganodaka. So there, some of the living entities, they sometimes stay as long as the whole Kalpa or maybe even beyond. So unfortunately, some living entities are very stubborn. Even after being given many chances, they don't learn. I remember when I was in school, sorry, I'm just diverting a bit. There was one very mischievous student. I do not know what his background was. Maybe he had a disturbed childhood and whatever. He had failed multiple times in class and he would be so mischievous. He had been punished and reprimanded. His parents had been called so many times. And no matter how much he was punished, he would go one notch higher in terms of his nonsense. And it went to, even though I don't know all the details, it went to a level where it was, he was actually misbehaving with teachers. So the point came when, and he was, I think, 8th or 9th or 10th standard, something like that. I don't remember exactly. He was senior to me. I was a couple of years younger. At one time, a police officer from the nearby police station was called to school. And this boy, held by the police officer, was taken into every classroom and slapped by the police officer in front of the whole classroom and paraded like that. Of course, a very extreme step. Not that I'm saying something like this should be done, but why I'm saying this is sometimes very unusual circumstances or situations require very drastic punishments. But ultimately, everything that is designed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead is for the rectification of the living entities. Because if there is no punishment, if there is no means of getting a feedback that you are doing something wrong, how will one stop and how will one improve? Because the Lord ultimately wants all living entities to come back to Him, back home, back to God. So those who are wise in spiritual understanding, they understand that actually the Lord's reward as well as punishment are both manifestation of the Lord's mercy and compassion. That's a mature way to look at it. Sometimes certain other faiths, especially from the other hemisphere, and I'm not saying necessarily that scriptures say it like that, but that tends to be a view that there is a God who's sitting with a, lightning, and as soon as he sees you, caught you doing something bad, bang you with the thunder. So because we have that kind of a mentality, sometimes human beings tend to project their consciousness onto the Lord. But the Lord is actually very kind. So anyway, these hells are designed for the hard nuts. So sometimes, many people ask, what is the threshold that I'll be put into hell? Correct. I had one, I don't know what they call it, one peg of whiskey at a social gathering with my friends. So will I be put into Tapta Surmi or whatever? I don't remember, whatever. So, of course, the punishments are proportional to the sins. So generally, for sins which are not very, very heavy and gross, oftentimes punishment is given at this plane itself. It's a person who has a mixture of goodness and sins, which are not too bad. May take another birth on this sphere again. He's, especially if he's Rajasic, maybe even in human beings, and enjoy and suffer the results of his previous activities, both the previous and many previous lives, various ways, in similar, comparable ways. So the general principle that is followed is that whatever one does, one attracts a similar experience into one's own life. So as to get a direct experience of whether this is desirable or not desirable. So there is a learning within the system itself. So we were discussing in the last class the various types of hells. We discussed around 28 described here. And we started our discussion. We don't intend to go through each and every one, but I will take a few more samples. Again, we hope that we don't need in the future to get any first-hand experience of any of these. But sometimes some people, when they hear about these hells, they immediately, I wouldn't say become spiritual, but at least they, those who are not too sinful, sometimes it may be a good wake-up call. Correct? Just like, sometimes we are doing something which is illegal, which we don't know is illegal. Maybe a tax issue, maybe breaking certain parts of the law which we didn't know. Then suddenly we find out, oh, this is the law, and then suddenly we become fearful. Oh, I've been doing this. So actually, I've been breaking the law for all this while. What if the law catches up with me now? So then one, makes an effort to rectify, align things. So this may be a positive or rather a negative stimulus for some. Negative in the sense that it is out of fear. So we discussed a few types of hells. It is said those who eat without sharing their food, those who are greedy. I think we concluded our class with this. I just want to start again with this. Without sharing with guests, old men, children, or eating without performing sacrifice. Such people become a worm in a lake of worms, which is 10,000 kiloyojanas wide. So there, he feeds on worms and worms feed on him. Krimi Bhojana is the name of the hell. So here actually the principle is that Prabhupada says in the purport also, it says that it's very important that living entities develop the culture of yajna. Yajna means understanding that everything is given by the Lord and sharing that, not being extremely selfish. So the right culture, like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhunjate te tvaham papam ye pachanti atma karana. Those who eat for their own sense enjoyment verily eat sin. So the right way is to offer food first for yajna. Yajnarthat karmano anyatra lokoyam karma vandhana. Tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samacha. All activities should be performed for yajna. And more specifically, the food that is cooked should be offered for yajna as out of gratitude for the Lord. And then after offering it to the Lord, one should also make it a practice to offer it to others, especially for a grihastha. Once Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Chaitanya Charitamrita, we'll be discussing this later. He was asked this question: what is the duty of a householder? So one of the primary duties, of course, chanting Krishna consciousness is the duty of all four varnas. So that obviously is at the top. But if you talk from the point of view of varnashram system, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu specifically mentioned that the duty of the grahastha is to do charity. Because a grahastha is grihastha, he is situated in a house with wealth, with family, with opulence. He has a strong tendency to be attached and a strong tendency for I, me and mine. The brahmachari, vanaprastha and sannyasi, they have nothing. So they own nothing, so there is nothing really much to be attached. Of course, people can become attached even to their kaupin. So that's another matter, but nothing really great from a material facility perspective. But the grahastha has a reason to be attached. Ata graha suta apta vitta janasya mohoyam aham mam. So a grahastha can counteract that by offering everything in yajna, which means he uses everything for the service of the Lord as far as possible and also gives charity. Prasadam distribution to the needy, to the people in general is very, very much recommended. Especially in ancient times, it is said the culture is, and it's mentioned in this chapter also, the culture is that a grahastha would go and step out of his home and call out, anybody hungry, anybody wants to eat, after the food is cooked, not after he has finished, before he has eaten. And then whoever is hungry, please come. So in the Vedic culture, nobody can be denied food and water. You can go to any home and ask for food and water. So this is very interesting. And in India, in many places, that culture still exists. At one time, when I was a sadhu, one time I was in uh, the Tapovan area in Nasik. Now, Amit is from Nasik. So, of course, that time he wasn't there. So, I was in the Tapovan area. I was with one more sadhu, one of my god brothers. And we were there. We were alone. We were preaching in Nasik. Those are early days. Now, there's a very beautiful temple, Shishi Radha Madan Gopal temple. That time, there was nothing. Those are the very early days. I had just one class. We would go once a month and do some programs. Just both of us went and together, and we went to Tapovan, and we went to the place where Shurpanka's nose was cut, and we went and sat down, you know, along the bank of the river. We were chanting for some time, and we were just walking back, and we were both very hungry. So I was a relatively new sadhu. So I asked the other person, "I'm so hungry now. What to do?" He said, "No problem. We are sadhus." So so after some time, and we were in a very, almost like a not in a very inhabited area, very sparsely, trees and forest all around, couple of houses here and there. And it took me into one place which was like a temple and ashram. And I was not knowing what to do, so I just tagged along with him. So we just went there and we just sat down there, and they served us food. There were other sadhus who sat and we ate our lunch, and then we got up and left. Scratching my head. Oh, like these things are also there. Eh? Nobody asked us even our name. So, of course, this is not very novel in India. In India, you wouldn't, because of course we were dressed in such a way that were there, they could identify us as in that manner, and they just saw us and they just said, "Sit here," and we sat down and they served and we ate and we left. I thought, "Oh, this is amazing." Said, "Yeah, this is India." So that is the Vedic culture. You can go to any house and ask. And this is not just true. I mean, cities, it's very difficult because nowadays it's very, you don't know who is the person who's coming to your door. But otherwise, this is the expectation from the householder. Anybody can come and say, "Give me food." You cannot refuse food and water. So those who are so selfish as to keep everything that they have for themselves, that mentality is very sinful. So for purification for a grahastha, he should do. And that is why for us also as devotees, even though we may not go outside our condominium and say, "Please come home," and because if you want to do, that's up to you. But that may be a bit odd in today's situation. But at least the culture of serving and feeding the Vaishnavas, calling guests and devotees and others to our home and feeding them Krishna Prasad, sponsoring the feeding of Krishna Prasad to the masses and the needy, and serving in various ways, whether it is Go Seva, whether it is Brahman Seva, whether it is Vaishnava Seva, whether it is contribution for the purpose of spreading Krishna consciousness, whatever way. It is said, Yajna, Dana, and Tapa, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, purifies even the pure. And especially for a Grihastha, for a Brahmachari, Yajna is the most important. For a Vanaprastha and Sannyasi, Tapa is the most important. And for a Grihastha, Dana is the most important. All three are important in all three, but most important amongst the three is Dana. So I'm just relating it to this principle because this is a very important practical thing for all of us to imbibe in our life. Even today, so many devotees, they will go to Braj and Vrindavan and they both just want to get the experience of Madhukari. They will just travel around Braj and just go to a home and ask, Correct? In ancient times, they would say, Bhavati Bhiksham Dehi. Oh mother, give me some bhiksha. Even today, many of the Brajvasi homes, they'll come and give a roti. Even if they are very poor. If you recollect, even Ravana, he came to take Mother Sita away. He adopted this practice because he knew a Grahastha would never refuse. So, of course, in Kali Yuga, there are many Ravanas, so we have to be a bit careful. But we have to remember the spirit, and in whatever way which is safe and practical, the principle of giving, the principle of sharing is very, very important. So that we don't go into krimi bhojana. The next one, those who rob a brahmana or others of their wealth, especially in the absence of emergency. This also perhaps I briefly mentioned. They go to a hell known as Sandamsha, where the Yamadutas tear their skin with red hot iron balls and tongs. So obviously stealing not a good deal. Again, the word not in an emergency is mentioned. This doesn't mean that in emergency you can steal. What it means, what it means is, sometimes in a desperate situation, if a person does something, then the sin is not as great as a person who's simply doing out of greed. That is what it means. Correct? Just like even in law, there is a difference in punishment for a cold-blooded murder and a murder which is suddenly done in a fit of rage. Correct? Yeah. There is more punishment. If a person accidentally became angry and suddenly, out of anger, somebody got killed when there was actually not an intention, but he got so angry that he hit that person so hard. Of course, he'll still be punishable and he'll be punished, but it will not be as severe as if he hatched a full conspiracy and got that person poisoned and killed him. So even though the end result is the same, the punishment is still different. Because when a person has thought through it carefully and conspired, then obviously the reactions are much. That's why the principle that of the severity of the reaction is always proportional to the motivation and the intensity of that. Indulging in sexual relationships with an unsuitable member of the opposite sex, which means essentially for those who are grahasthas, anybody else other than their spouse. This is punishable by in a hell known as Tapta Surmi, where he's beaten by whips and the man is made to embrace a red hot, almost molten image of a woman, forced to embrace. And for a woman, she's made to embrace an image of a man. She's burning, but they have to embrace. So watch out, because I don't think in this group we have that challenge. But in Kali Yuga, this is become quite permissive. And just because people tell each other that it is okay, it is okay, it is okay, it doesn't make it okay. Because Yamaraj doesn't consider the votes of our neighbors and friends and our WhatsApp group opinions. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagvat pranita. The principles of dharma are given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the difference between the morality that a society comes up with for themselves and the laws of God. The laws of God or the laws of nature are immutable and they cannot be tampered with. Mundane, man-made morality may vary from place to place. But just because the society says, oh, in our community, this is okay, doesn't make. For example, if you go to lower planetary systems, they may feel, oh, it's okay here to do this, but it is not okay in the eyes of the Lord and in the eyes of the laws of God. So that is why it is very important for us to be conversant of the law. Those who even neglect following their prescribed duties, that also is a sin. So sometimes we just think of sin as hurting others, stealing. Of course, these are definitely sins where we are committing harm to others. But even neglecting of prescribed duties is a sin. So the broadest definition of punya and sin, the simplest and the broadest definition of punya and papa is following one's prescribed duty is punya. Neglecting or acting contrary to one's prescribed duties is papa or sin. Very simple. And of course, prescribed duty also changes based on one's varna, ashram, and elevation of consciousness. What may be a sin for a Shudra? Maybe a Mahapap for a Brahman. And in some cases, what may be a sin for a Brahman may be an acceptable activity for a Shudra. So based on the level of evolution, a person is judged based on his situation. And that is where the principle of dharma comes. That is why Sanatan Dharma is not just a system where there is a checklist. These are the 5 items, 10 items, and everybody is necessarily judged by exactly the same scale. If you go to a school and exams are going on in the school, is there the same exam paper in each classroom? Let's say final exams are going on. You enter a school. Oh, exams are going on, final exams. So you go to every classroom. See, there's different paper. Everybody is having maths exam. But in the KG class, they are asking how many balls are here. And the person has to count and say 3. You go to another classroom, they'll ask 3 plus 3 equal to a different question, more difficult question. And same number of marks. There also they get 1 mark, here also they get 1 mark. In higher class, 3 square plus 3 square equal to. The KG student doesn't even understand what is 3 square. See, what is this 2 jumped on 3? What is happening? This is a mistake in the paper only. Teacher, wrong paper. That teacher doesn't even know mathematics. You cannot put 3 on top of 2. You have to write 3 after 2. Then it becomes 32. There's one story which Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati tells. And this is how, people at different levels of consciousness have a very different perception of what is right, what is wrong. And that is why this principle of dharma is actually so subtle. It's not so easy to understand because each person, according to his evolution, spiritual evolution, perceives things so differently. Even for the same situation. So he said one mother, she was practically illiterate. She engaged a tuition teacher for her son because it was her great desire that her son, because she was relatively poor and she was uneducated, she wanted her son to be very well educated. She engaged a tuition teacher. So the tuition teacher came and said, okay, I will teach your son. So he started teaching A, B, C, and the son would repeat alphabets. The son was very young, 5, 6 years old. He was learning the alphabets. And the child was learning and the mother was very happy. And after that, she used to be busy in her own work and the child went on year after year studying. 4 or 5 years passed. Child was already in standard, 6th standard, something like that. And once she thought, maybe let me go and just check out what the sir is teaching because I'm so busy in my work, I barely So she went and the tuition class was going on. And the teacher was teaching to the student. So he was teaching triangle. He said, triangle ABC. She heard, ABC? My child is still learning ABC after 5 years. And then he was teaching the Pythagoras theorem. A square plus B square is equal to C square. She was convinced, this guy is a cheater. After 5 years, he's still teaching ABC. She took a stick and beat the teacher and drove him out of the house, saying, what nonsense, you're cheating. My children, you're all teaching the same ABC in different ways. You're just looting money from me. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati tells the story. I'm just paraphrasing. I don't remember all the details exactly, but this is the essential message there. That sometimes when people are not very mature in their understanding, they are unable to actually understand and appreciate a subject matter for what it is. That's why scriptures also give rules and regulations and duties for people based on their own levels. And that is why Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, to follow your own duty is piety. Follow somebody else's duty is impiety. Better to follow your imperfect duty perfectly rather than perfectly follow somebody else's duty. Because to follow another's duty is dangerous. So it's a very interesting concept. No other religious system has this concept. Because in Sanatana Dharma, we acknowledge and understand each living entity's unique position based on his evolution at that moment in time. And is judged based on that context, that level of evolution. It's not a generic checklist that Yamadutas are going around with. So actually the divine system is very, 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 very fair and very cognizant of your context, your situation, your spiritual status, your level of knowledge or ignorance, your spiritual evolution, and those who are more advanced are punished more for the same sin. So especially all of you, you are all knowledgeable. Now that you have heard Gita and Bhagavad, so you will be judged in a different league than your neighbor, than your classmate, than your office colleague. But you'll also be rewarded based on all your wonderful position of having that knowledge and acquiring that knowledge. So to whom much is given, much is expected. So because the Lord has given us something higher, expects from us a higher standard of behavior. So I'm mentioning all this because these are the principles which are very important to understand in the context of how karma works. These are not necessarily mentioned here in this chapter. But just by hearting a list of sinful reactions by themselves, it's good to know. But what will happen if we simply read a list of, we will go around with this checklist saying, hey, this person is going to this hell, this person is going to this hell. Let's not, that's why I'm giving you a broader. This is what immediately happens. No? He's going here, he's going there. Let us not worry where anybody else is going. Let us worry only about ourselves. Because we neither know their context, don't know their background, don't know their situation. We don't even know what exactly they are doing, whether that is how we perceive it to be or not. Let Krishna and his agents manage that. All these are for us to reflect on ourselves. Of course, if we are preachers, then we want to share this information in a spirit of giving knowledge to others so that they can reflect and take a take the right course of action for themselves. But let us not get into a mode of judging everybody else other than ourselves. So coming back to the point, those who neglect their prescribed duties and break the religious principles despite being born in a respectable family, especially amongst the four varnas, the Vaishya, Kshatriya and Shudra are considered more responsible because they are Dvija. They are given the opportunity to, up to some extent, understand the Vedas. Vaishya to some extent, Kshatriya a bit more, and Brahmanas, of course, very learned in the Vedas. So they are more responsible than the Shudras, and being more trained and cultured, more is expected from them. So when a person, again, without emergency, neglects his prescribed duties, they said he's put into the Vaitarani river. Now, Vaitarani river is another very famous river. Don't confuse this with the Viraja river, which is at the border of the universe. It's Vaitarani. Vaitarani is the river which flows around hell. It is like a moat. A moat. Like a moat means like a canal around the hell. So you cannot escape, you cannot run away. So there are, it's a river full of all the most obnoxious things. It is mentioned that the river is filled with stool, urine, pus, bile, fat, mucus, hair, nails. Extremely putrid and disgusting. And there are fierce, deadly aquatic animals in that river. And this kind of sinful people who are deviating from their prescribed duties are pushed into that river, and they are bitten and eaten by these aquatics, and also they have to drink from the river that they are submerged in. Obviously a very painful situation. If a man of a higher class hunts animals unnecessarily, so sometimes people think, oh, hunting is a wonderful thing. So hunting doesn't go unpunished. Hunting doesn't go unpunished. It is said they go to a hell known as Prana Rodha, where Yamadutas make them, it's like they have done their target practice on other animals. They become the target, and there is practice done on them. You did this, now you experience the same thing. You stand here, they will practice on you. So these are ways by which those who do sacrifice of animals in various kinds of religious ceremonies just to increase their prestige, and this is unauthorized sacrifices. Unless a yajna specifically prescribes and the yajna is performed perfectly according to Shastra Vidhi. But that in Kali Yuga doesn't happen. In Kali Yuga, animal sacrifice is forbidden. Because perfect chanting of mantras that would happen in previous ages, it's not possible. So one will simply incur sin. So those who sacrifice animals to increase their material prestige, it is said they go to a hell known as Vishasana, where Yamadutas kill them and slaughter them in the same way, giving them tremendous amount of pain. A government official who plunders other businessmen. Now, this is a very common scenario in today's time. Government officers extort money from businesses. Hafta, of course, begins with hafta. At the minister level, goes to hundreds and thousands or tens of thousands of crores. They go to a hell known as Sarame Yadana. This is Sarame Yadana. 720 dogs voraciously bite and devour that person. So just like these officers, nibble away at the wealth and extort money, these dogs come and bite away the flesh of the sinful person in the Sarame Yadana hell. Those who lie a lot and especially do fraud in their business transactions or in the giving of charity, they go to a hell known as Avichimat. Avichimat means there a place where there is no water. So in that particular place, there's a very high mountain, 100 yojanas high, and he is repeatedly thrown down from the mountain with head down. It is made to fall and collapse down. Head first on a very stony surface, which looks like water, but is not water, which means you're thrown, you think, oh, I'm taking a nice dive into a swimming pool. One comes crashing, head down, falls on that stony surface, hard surface, but doesn't die. Once he falls, he's again picked up, taken up again, once more. This is bungee jumping without a rope tied. And free retries until you learn your lesson. If a Brahmana or a Brahman's wife or someone following a vrata drinks liquor, so drinking liquor is also, they are put into a hell known as Ayappan. Ayappan, sorry, it is not the Taptasurmi. Taptasurmi is the one which we discussed about, embracing the molten iron. Ayappan. Ayappan means one is given a glass of molten hot liquid like a molten iron or something like that. Yamaduta stand on the chest of that person, open his mouth forcibly and pour molten hot boiling liquids. It is a liquid hot iron is poured into his mouth. He has to experience that excruciating burning pain without dying. Remember, we discussed this, that the body in hellish planets is known as a Yatana Deha. It is designed for pain. Without dying, you experience a lot of pain. Another interesting hell, Shara Kardama, or a pool of mud. It said if a person doesn't know how to show proper respect to one's superiors. See, it is a culture to show proper respect to one's superior. Superior in all ways. It is said one may be superior in age, superior in qualifications, superior in qualities, whatever way. Superior in spiritual wisdom. If anybody is a vriddha, vriddha means senior. Vriddha doesn't just mean old. A person can be vriddha. Vriddha actually means increased. Increased not just in age, but increased in wisdom. Increased in knowledge. Increased even in wealth, a very respectable position. It is said one must show proper respect. If one doesn't do that, then he is thrown headfirst into a pool of mud where he suffers greatly. Those who sacrifice human beings to Bhairava or Kali, they are put into a hell known as Rakshogana Bhojana, where Rakshasas cut them into pieces. With sharpened swords, they drink their blood and they sing and dance around them in party. So all those people who think this kind of sacrifices are okay, the devatas become pleased, so this should be a warning sign. Neither Lord Shiva nor Kali Mata is going to, be pleased by these kind of offerings. Those who give pain to animals by piercing them, in Sula Parota, their bodies are pierced with needle-like lances. I'm just telling you brief things. There's a lot of details as well. Those who confine others in dark wells or caves, imprison people unnecessarily. They are pushed into dark wells. Avata Nirodhana, where poisonous fumes and smoke suffocates him. Another interesting. We were talking about charity. We were talking about in Grihastha, the dharma of Atithi Satkar is very important. Properly treating guests. Anybody who comes to our house, especially unannounced. If a householder receives guests or visitors and he becomes angry at them, irritated at them, doesn't treat them properly, and looks at them, why you have come here? Bother me. They are put into a hell known as Paryavartana, where hard-eyed vultures, herons, crows, and similar birds gaze at him. They swoop down upon them and pluck out their eyeballs. So this is also another aspect which is related to the dharma of charity for the householders. So you should be happy to serve guests. This is the least. Even if we don't go out and do a lot of charity, if somebody comes to our home, we should be happy. And generally, I see in Indian culture, nowadays, I don't know, at least when I was young, why I'm saying nowadays, because, I've been already in Malaysia for 24, 25 years. But at least as far as my experience growing up in India, at least in the 80s and 90s, which I clearly remember, at least in, the circle that I was in, most families, they would, whether they actually were happy or not, I don't know, but whenever they would see guests, they will express such, oh, you have come, wonderful, come, they will make you feel as if you are so special, and they are so happy that, that is the greatest happiness of their life to see you. And they'll feed you so nicely, they'll give you so many things. Then when you are going, they'll walk with you all the way, not just up to, their door, not just up to the lift, down all the way until they see you off in your car or, taxi or whatever. That was the practice. I so distinctly remember, so much so that I would think that, yeah, this is how it is. This is normal. I mean, I grew up, in that culture. I don't know whether it is like that now. I think it is not. So these are all aspects, and why all these rules are there. Ultimately, it is to instill the feeling of detachment. Ultimately, it is to make us understand and realize that ultimately everything is the property of God. Ishavasyam idam sarvam yatkinchit jagatyam jagattena tyaktena bhunjita magrida kasya siddhanam. The Ishopanishad says, everything is the property of God. Yes, you have a right to take your share for your needs, but don't claim more than what is your share. Be willing to share with others. Otherwise, it is sinful. Ma grida kasya siddhanam. Don't try to. So even those who are more fortunate and have more share of the resources, they are expected to have a heart, share those resources. By understanding that ultimately all this is belonging to the property, is the property of the Lord, which is in my custody, and I must have the consciousness. Having been blessed with this good fortune, to be able to help others in whatever ways. So ultimately, all these things are designed to align us with the right consciousness. So these are not just some ritualistic activities. If you analyze these dharmic duties, deep down you will see ultimately they are aimed at evoking our eternal nature. They are all aligned with the supreme reality, which is Bhuktaram Yagatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Surula Sarvehinam Gyatvam. Bhagavad Gita. That Krishna says that I am the supreme enjoyer, I am the supreme controller, I am the supreme well-wisher. Ultimately, we have to come to that realization and we have to develop that vision. Shavasyam idam sarvam yat. Everything belongs to the Lord, including all that I have, including my body, including the abilities I have. So when we develop that kind of a consciousness, And when we follow these principles of religion through that activity, gradually that consciousness becomes cultivated. That's why the whole Varnashram system is designed. The Sanatan Dharma is designed in such a way that it gradually brings us and guides us naturally towards that state of consciousness. So this is not just some fancy, crazy, imaginary, whimsical set of practices created by some ancient civilization out of their own imaginative minds. The exact expression of these duties may vary based on certain situations. In today's context, in the modern urban setting, it may be different. But the principle is this. This is very important for us to recognize. The last hell, which is the 28th hell, and then we'll conclude. There are just 4-5 more chapters. So we'll conclude another 5 minutes. Those who are sinful to earn wealth because they are so proud of their wealth and they are so fearful of losing it. And such people, it is said, they have a twisted vision. They are crooked and cunning. And they are put into a hell known as Suchimukha. Suchimukha means where they are stitched. Yamadutas, like expert tailors, sewers, they punish them by stitching thread through their entire body, like weavers manufacturing cloth. So anyway, so this was just a sample. So 28 hells are described. And as the chapter concludes, Shukadev Goswami, who's narrating all these things to Parikshit Maharaj, he says that actually there are hundreds and thousands of hellish planets. I've just described sample popular destinations. Not popular in the sense that people love to go there, popular in the sense maybe more common destinations, because these are common sins. But actually there are hundreds and thousands of hellish planets. All the impious people, not restricted just to this list, but even others, they go to these various kinds of hells for various periods of time based on the nature of their sinful activity, and they have to suffer. Those who are pious, they don't go to the hell. Rather, they go to the higher planets. They may go to the Divya Swarga or the Bhauma Swarga. But mind one thing, Shukadev Goswami says, both those who go to heaven and those who go to hell, after they complete enjoying or suffering the consequence of their activities, again they have to come back on earth, take birth here, and again perform the prescribed duties, and again generate the necessary piety to go up or down. So the cycle continues. It's not that just because you go to heaven once, you are finished, you are done for all time to come. No. You enjoy only as much as you earn, and you suffer also only as much as you sin. And as he's concluding, he's now concluding not just this chapter, he's concluding all that he has discussed. So Shukdev Goswami says, I've been talking about the whole structure of the universe. You remember right from second canto, I've been talking about structure of the universe. Not just I'm talking in fifth canto. I spoke about, primary creation, secondary creation, the whole population, so many species. And, now I've given detailed geographical view of all these things. So this entire universe, this Brahmanda with all these 14 planetary systems, I've already explained multiple times to you, Parikshit Maharaj, that people, especially yogis in their initial stages, like to contemplate on this manifest universe as a form of the Lord, which is known as the Virat Rupa. So this kind of a meditation is also good because it helps to elevate a person from a materialistic consciousness to a slightly higher spiritual consciousness. And ultimately, because even the manifest universe is manifest from the Lord's energies, when one thinks of the Lord in terms of that, that is also a good beginning. It is not the perfect vision. That's also a good beginning. Because even though it is Gunamai, it is still coming from the Lord. So if a person is at that level and he likes to think like that, that's okay. That's a good thing. But gradually one must come higher. As a person becomes purified by listening to the glories of the Virata Rupa, especially when the Virata Rupa is heard in the context of Bhagavad Dharma, like what we are discussing in Bhagavatam, gradually one's faith and devotion to the Supreme Lord will increase. So now, even though we are faithful, still we are not able to immediately appreciate the Lord's spiritual form. That is the truth, isn't it? So even for us, these kind of descriptions help us to elevate our consciousness. And gradually one will be able to understand the topics of the Supreme Lord, which actually are very difficult to understand. So no harm starting with the Virata Rupa. Gradually one goes to the understanding of the Lord from the external to the internal, from the gross to the subtle, ultimately to the spiritual. And ultimately one will be able to understand and appreciate the Satchidananda Vigraha, the fully spiritual form of the Supreme Personality of God. That happens only when one becomes purified. So it's a gradual process. It's a gradual evolution. And ultimately, only through pure devotion, one can properly realize the Satchidananda form of the Lord. Sukadeva Goswami concludes the chapter by saying, in this way, I have described to you everything. I have described the structure of the universe. I have described the Bhu, the earth, along with its dvipas, varshas, rivers, mountains, skies, oceans, lower planets, higher planets, directions, hellish planets, stars. Sab kuch. I have explained everything. All these are parts of the Virata Rupa, and all living entities are placed within this Virata Rupa, and they have their own sthanam within this Virata Rupa. So with this, we come to the conclusion of the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavat, and our humble obeisances and glorification to the Lord's Virata form, and also our prayers and hope that we will never have to see the hellish planets again. And not just that, that's perhaps for most of us not such a big deal, because most of you are chanting the holy name, so I'm not expecting any of you to be, visited by Yamaraj. But beyond that, we want to also make others fortunate. We want to save others from the visit of Yamaraj. So we can create great good fortune for ourselves by saving others from the clutches of Yamaraj. So let us also be very enthusiastic, share this knowledge, whoever we can reach out to. Of course, very intelligently, we have to present this knowledge based on the attitude, mentality, and the evolution of the person that we are speaking to, in a way that is appreciable by them, in a way that will inspire them so that they can come to a higher level of consciousness. And that kind of service is actually very, very pleasing to the Supreme Personality of God. Okay, so I'm opening up the floor. Yes, Suresh Prabhu, you have a question?
Yeah, Prabhuji, I have 4 to 5 questions. Hope it's okay.
You can ask one, then if anybody else has question, then we take theirs, then after we can come back to you. If nobody else has, then you can go on.
Today's question, I'll ask 2 questions, then I'll go to the previous chapter. Is that okay?
You ask first, then I will, depending on how long it takes, we'll decide.
Prabhuji, like in the current our situation, when we are in pain, we remember God, right? So when hellish planet living entity is going through so much of pain, why are they not able to remember God?
No, only pious people, those who in misery remember God, that actually is a good thing. See, there are people who remember God always. They are very elevated souls. Lower than them are those who remember God only in misery.
Okay.
Yeah. There are some people who are so lower or so unfaithful that they neither remember God in In good times or in bad times, they remember God, but they curse God. In the wrong way, because of you. So remembering God in a difficult situation is not a problem. It is good, but we don't want to be only remembering God in bad times. Then we are not at a very evolved level of consciousness. So it is not bad. Even a great devotee, when he is in great difficulty, takes shelter of God. That's not a problem. That is perfectly okay. But the devotee is always taking shelter of God, even in good situation. Even in a good situation, is very grateful. Correct? The problem is generally, Krishna says, no, in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana sukritino arjuna arto arthati jigyasu jnani cha bharatarshava. 4 kinds of people approach me.
Yeah.
Correct? Artha, those who are in distress, they are in distress, they remember God. Prabhupada says in the purport, Krishna appreciates that they remember him and come to him when they are in distress. So Krishna sees it positively. So that's not the highest standard, but at least he came to me. Correct? For example, when a common citizen gets into a problem, does he go to the police to seek help, or does he go to the local gunda to get help?
He'll go to police. Yeah.
You understand, right? Yeah. So one must know where to go in problem, so that one doesn't make worse one's own situation. So that is okay, but we want to go higher.
Yeah.
Okay, so okay, I'll go to Santanam Prabhu, then I'll come back to you. Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. May know then who will just we listen so many sins and the hellish planets. Then in such case, who will go to the Vilaswarga planets?
My understanding is, and you can ask around others. See, if you are getting an ability to enjoy, that means you are performing some materially pious activities. Otherwise, you will not get the facility to enjoy. A person can be materially pious, but not have regard for God. So a demo, you see big demons, right? They were also performing yajnas, doing tapasya, how did they gather their power and their wealth? Ravan was not simply a thief that he went and snatched around. He did a lot of tapasya. Hiranyakashipu, they earned their enjoyment, but they were demoniac. So there are some people who will follow the system to get what they want, but they are not interested in surrendering to or acknowledging the system maker. They see the system maker as their competitor. Correct? They want to be the central enjoyer. They want to grab the position of God. They want to become God. So any kind of enjoying facility, even at a Rajasic level. So generally, the lower planets are generally very passionate Rajasic individuals. But if there is a facility of enjoyment that they have got, that means, they have performed certain karmas, which allows them to enjoy in a particular way for a particular time. Those who are pious, the devas, the suras, are those who are Vishnu Bhaktas. You cannot go to the higher planets unless you have some devotion to Vishnu. So that is the broad principle. I do not know very specific details, but this is the broad understanding. Yeah, I'll go to Suraj and then I'll come to Sudhir Sundar Prabhu. Yeah, Suraj, question 2. There are many more competing hands. Huh?
Yeah, Prabhu. Prabhuji, you are telling like in nowadays, like animal sacrifice prohibited, right? So like goddess Kali, like that, how does that sacrifice work? Because
Prabhupada explains it in Gita and the Bhagavad also. I think Gita also, if I'm not wrong, but maybe the Bhagavatam definitely. And he explains this in the context of Bharat Maharaj, when he was about to be slaughtered in front of Kali,
yeah,
that purport. Prabhupada explains very clearly. He says that very tamasic worshippers of Durga or Shiva who worship Kali or Kala Bhairava, they adopt these kind of practices where they may slaughter a man or an animal. And he says that these deities never accept this offering. But because these deities are surrounded by their associates, the ghosts and other lower kind of beings, they are the ones who actually eat these offerings. So you are eating ghost prasad, not Lord Shiva's prasad or Kali prasad. You can go back to those purports and read, you will get all that information. So this is all tamasic kind of worship. We see, right? Worship is also in Sattva, Raja and Tama. So tamasic worship actually can cause us more harm than good. That is why in that particular situation, ultimately Kali jumps out from the deity and takes the sword with which they are going to kill Jad Bharat, and she chops off the head of the person who's about to kill. She becomes so upset. So Prabhupada explains very nicely in those purports there. So in Kali Yuga, what to speak of this kind of animal sacrifice? This is an animal sacrifice in the mode of ignorance. But I am talking even about Ashwamedha Yajna, Gomedha Yajna in previous yugas, where in Ramayana and Ashwamedha, even in the Mahabharata times, the Brahmanas and the Rishis were so qualified that they would sacrifice a horse and they would chant mantras and the horse would come back to life, or the horse would immediately get a human birth, or would go to the higher planets, because that was the power of the mantras that they would do. They would do it so perfectly. So if you don't have the technology of reviving and giving a higher birth, the soul that you are sacrificing, then you incur the sin of killing. Correct? Yeah. For example, I take away your house. You are in Hyderabad now. I take away a house. Let's say you are in a 2-bedroom house you have now, 3-bedroom. How big is your house? 3. 3-bedroom. I take away your house. But in return, in Bangalore, I give you a 6-bedroom bungalow with a nice courtyard and a garage and a swimming pool. Will you be sad or will you be happy? But I will evict you from your current house.
Yeah, evict is something.
Okay, okay. His wife is also very happy. See, so like that, if you take away and give something higher, correct? Then it is not seen as a loss for the animal, because for the animal also it's a benefit, and for the Yajman also there is benefit. So this is not just about killing. It is about what is the consequence of the killing. Yeah. Correct? And that is what Krishna is telling Arjuna. No? For you, there is no loss. He says, Hatva Gatosi Swargam. If you die, you will go to Swarga. If you win, you will Bhokshase Mahim. You will enjoy this kingdom. So die also good for you. You will go to heaven. Because as a Kshatriya, you die in a dharmic battle. You understand the principle? Yeah. So killing is not always bad. What is the consequence? Whether it is aligned with dharma or not aligned with dharma. Okay. But in Kali Yuga, either categories of sacrifice is banned, because we don't have that kind of Brahmanas and Rishis today to perform these kind of sacrifices. So in the current time, Sankirtana Yajna is the Yajna we have to focus on. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
So Prabhuji, so Goddess Kali is more of portrayed as she's giving punishment to the wrongdoers, not like more of a sacrifice part, right?
So sometimes Durga takes ghastly forms like Kali, Shiva takes ghastly forms like Kala Bhairav and others, so that people who are in those lower modes get attracted to them because they are not attracted to a sattvic form of worship. Huh? So for those beings, if they do certain activities in the lower modes, gradually they are brought higher. But these
Okay.
are not practices for us because we are at least fortunate to be in a situation of a more higher level of consciousness. So what may be dharma for their worshippers is adharma for us.
Got it.
You understand? Correct? See, for example, a person who was smoking 20 cigarettes every day is smoking 10 now. Will you glorify him or will you criticize him? It's progress or not? It's progress, right? For him.
Yeah.
But you are never smoking. Now you have come to 10 cigarettes a day. And both of you are together. Who is going up and who is going down? Correct? Then you are going down, he is coming up. Even though at this point, both are you at the same level, your direction is different. One is going up, one is going down. See, that's why things are not so absolute. Well, it's not so easy to judge. The laws of karma are very intricate. That's why we leave the judging to the Lord and his agents. We don't get into that business of saying he's like this, he's like that. Okay? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I will. Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
I'll go to Sudhir Sundar Prabhu next, and then I'll come to Sridhar Prabhu. Yeah. Yes,
Okay, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I just wanted to confirm two one things. The first question is that who are the people who become the what is that? Chamadutas, Prabhu. Is it that when what is that? Somebody passed away. If there's no any pinda offering, those are the people who become Chamadutas. Is it? Because
I do not know, Prabhu. Did you read that somewhere? It's a good question.
I kind of heard it in one of the class. They were telling that. So what happens is that when there's no any pinda offering in during what is that all these Amavase and all those things, then like those kind of people sometimes they would take the position of this one.
Possible. Actually, I don't remember. I'd heard about this sometime back.
I heard it, so I just wanted to confirm.
No, maybe. See, even of course, it's an interesting point because even Yamaduta is a species. Yeah, so there are some living entities who are taking birth as Yamadutas also. So obviously there is certain karma, and obviously it doesn't look like it's an entirely pleasant karma because to be a torture giver to others is not particularly a position which is a highly exciting position that there'll be a lot of applicants for. So but maybe we need to check that more. But yes, definitely there is certain kind of karma which results in this kind of behavior. And perhaps by doing that kind of seva, they get redeemed in some way. That's quite possible too. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Question, Prabhu. What is that? What is that? Pitraloka, is it deemed to be what is that? Heavenly planet? That means
heaven. Yes.
So that means once your pious activity ends, you still have to take a rebirth in what earth? Am I right, Prabhu?
Yes.
So I'm trying to reconcile because Bali Maharaj appears to be living there since the past time where during the what is that Amana Dev and so on. So how for his case is it a special case or how?
No, because he has been already given the blessing. He was put into Sutala, right, where Bali Maharaj is currently residing, and he has been given the blessing that he'll stay in Sutala until the end of the current Manvantara, after which he will become Indra. So his karmic account is still a lot. Like karmic account in the sense, of course, in one sense, he's a pure devotee, but because he had a desire, Krishna blessed him with that. So, so whether one goes up or one goes down, the principle Shukadeva Goswami mentions is, unless one has transcended and gone beyond, after enjoying or suffering, one comes back to earth. So earth is the base location. Go up, go down, exhaust your enjoyment or suffering and come back. So it doesn't matter whether you go to Pitrulok, Chandralok, Suryalok. Generally, and this is generally true for the Trilokas, generally when one goes beyond the Triloka, when one goes to Janar Mahar Tapa Satya, generally one has come to a certain such a level of advancement that one is not interested in fruitive activity anymore. So generally those souls don't fall down because they are progressing higher and higher and higher, and they are not working on the platform of fruitive activity. They have come to the point of cultivating either jnana or yoga or bhakti, and they continue their spiritual evolution. But those who are basically trapped within the karma cycle, as in papa punya, and those who are not, evolved, they will continue here. It is possible if one goes to Swarga and one becomes a pure devotee in Swarga, in theory, go back to Godhead from there. One doesn't have to come down. But that generally doesn't happen because moksha and going back to Godhead is very difficult from higher planets or from the lower planets or from the hell because of the extreme situations there. Earth is the best place.
Okay, bro. Just another point. I think the baseline for the Garasa during those days was before you eat, you have to go out, out, out of your house and supposed to call people who are around there. I think that was supposed to be the baseline during.
Yeah. Today also we mentioned that, right? That you come outside your house and then you announce anybody who is hungry. 3 times it is said one should announce. And then if there is no one, then one can eat. If there is someone, you feed them first, or you bring them and you eat together with them. So you share.
Okay,
including if there are any hungry animals around. So the Vedic culture is not just only taking care about ourselves. Even for the ants, even up to today, in certain traditional families, they'll keep a little bit of flour or something in the side so that ants and others also get their share to eat, because they also have a right on the property of God. So see, this is how our whole culture is designed. Understanding that, we are not the enjoyers or proprietors. So sad that, that whole system in its original state is, so very diluted in today's time. But like what we discussed, at least at a practical level, we should try to use our wealth in whatever way we can in the service of the Lord, the devotees, and the community. Even if we cannot exactly do it in the same manner. For example, in Bandar Kinrara, you are staying, if you come out from your row house and shout, probably there is nobody there, or, people will think you are mad, it may not be practical. So what we all can do is we either invite Vaishnavas and others to our home, or on certain occasions, we arrange to distribute prasad food to poor or needy, or we sponsor feast in the temple, in various ways we can. Or if guests come, especially guests. I remember, when I was a young boy, I was in college and I was already a devotee. I went to the house of a devotee, unannounced, Atithi, one of my senior godbrother. I just happened to be there, so I said, I will just go and ring the bell and just say Hari Bol to him. So I rang the bell and he opened the door. He's a dentist. So, so he saw me and he was so happy to see, because I was Atithi. I mean, he was genuinely happy. He was not acting out. And the first question he asked me is, have you had lunch? He asked me, how are you? Why did you come here? How are you here? What brought you here? I still remember that because, I saw that, this is such a wonderful example of a grihastha. The first thing he asked me was, have you had lunch? Come and have lunch. All other conversations were later. and I had lunch. I didn't go to his house to have lunch though. That wasn't the plan. But I happened to be around the lunchtime and he was so enthusiastic. So I learned from that example. It was an inspiring example for me. So this is an appreciable consciousness. This is the consciousness that devotee should have. So I learned from that episode. So in that way, by seeing the example of other devotees, we see how we can instill this principle in our own lives. And the principle of serving prasad and honoring of atithis, of course, for Vaishnavas and Brahmanas is very important, but this is true for everybody. Even our enemy comes to our door, we are expected to give same treatment. This is our culture. And this even demons have followed. Sometimes we call demons third class people. Jarasandha followed. Duryodhan followed. And I don't want to go into those stories right now because we don't have time. Sometimes we think, I am a great soul, this person's a fallen and this and that. And they may have many faults. There are many areas where they were better than what we are today. So that's why I said we should not be quick to judge. Because we may see one fault in a person where we may be better, but he may be better than us in another 100 areas. Anyway, sorry. So coming back, sorry, did I answer the question?
Yes, Prabhu. Thanks.
Yeah.
Harish.
Yeah, I'll go to Sridhar Prabhu and then I'll come Suraj back to you. Yeah, Sridhar Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. This when Shraddha's ceremony is done for the disease, right? So after that, Shraddha. Yeah. Shraddha ceremony is done for disease, right? So they will go to the Pitra Loka, right? So before that, where they lie, Prabhuji, the Atma?
The Atma is in a Preta form. So when a person leaves the body, it takes a Preta form. So Preta form is a body which is undeveloped, which is not suitable to enter Pitrilok. So through the offering of the Pinda Udaka, the Shraddha, through that offering, the body of the deceased gets the necessary elements and ingredients, get transformed from a Preta to a Pitri form, which allows them to progress and enter Pitrilok. That is the concept. How exactly the technology works, I don't know, but that is the concept.
And yeah, thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, one more question. This one. So Yamaloka is also part of Hellish, or it will be in between, like.
Yamaloka, Yamaraj has his abode which is above the hell. So he has the, I think, Samya Mani, right? If I'm not wrong, his residence. So just above the hells is Yamaraj's abode, and then there is also the Pitriloka. So Pitriloka is in 2 places. Below the lower planetary systems, there is Pitriloka near where Yamaraj stays, because he is also considered one of the, the king of the Pitris, Yamaraj. And also there is half of the moon is Pitriloka and half of the moon is Devaloka. 1/2. So that's also a very interesting point. So I do not know the finer difference between, at least I do not know. Sure there is. What is the Pitriloka on moon different and how it is different from the Pitriloka, just below the lower planetary systems. I do not know that nuance. But yeah, but Pitrulok is almost like the first step into the heavenly regions. Indralok and other lokas are more higher. Lok is there. Suryalok is also quite high. So, yeah, so that is the concept. So, Pitralok is considered an auspicious destination from a material perspective.
So the Pitraloka is below the lower planets, right? And after that, Yamaloka, and after that, Hellish planets.
Yes,
correct,
yes. I'm just trying to recollect whether Pitrilok comes first or just give me a minute, or Yamalok Yamaraj abode comes first. Let me check. Here it is. Okay, yeah. So in this chapter itself, verse 5, the hellish planets are located in the intermediate space between the three worlds and the Garbhodak Ocean on the southern side of the universe. Pitrilok is also located in this region. Yamaraj is the king of the Pitris and he resides here. So the relative position is not explicitly mentioned here, but it's somewhere in that region, between the hells and the lower planets. Pitrilok and Yamaraj above. Just by being there doesn't make it good or bad, because I think that's kind of an exception. Perhaps that's like that, and this is just my speculation. That's like that because there are pious living entities who also come, not dragged by Yamadutas, but come via the route of Yamaraj's assessment and are sent to Pitriloka. Perhaps something like that. So that is the immediate stopover, or the immediate, first heavenly enjoyment looks like. At least that's what it seems. But yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Suraj, back to you.
Yeah, Prabhu, if it's late, I can take it next week, Prabhu.
No, I'm okay. Depends on what. Yeah.
It's a small question, Prabhu.
Okay.
So, as per Bhagavatam, our Earth doesn't do a rotation in 24 hours. I mean, it's in the fixed orbit, right?
Our Earth doesn't rotate as per this view of the Bhagavatam. Our Earth is fixed vis-a-vis the Bhumandal plane.
Okay. So in the orbit, does our Earth rotate?
Which orbit are you saying?
I mean, the sun has an orbit. Yeah, Bhagavatam. I'm referring to Bhagavatam.
In the Bhagavatam view, the Earth doesn't move. The sun moves and all other planets move.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, Prabhuji. And what is heliocentric and geocentric you were talking about, right?
Heliocentric means the sun is assumed to be the center, and all the relative position of the planets, including Earth, is considered relative to the sun. So, because all motion is relative, right?
Okay.
All motion is relative. So, the modern scientists have a heliocentric view, which means they assume that all the planets are moving in an orbit around the sun, including the Earth. So when you keep the sun in the center and see the relative motion, yeah, you can see it like that. That's one way to see it. But if you see Earth in the center and Earth as stationary and see all the planetary motions vis-a-vis the Earth, then that is the Bhagavatam view. But in an absolute sense, even by modern science, in an absolute sense, you cannot say who's rotating around whom, because all motion is relative.
Yeah.
Right? Because there is no ultimate reference point. I'm talking from modern science perspective. But the Bhagavatam view is that the Earth vis-a-vis the Bhumandal is stationary. And the motion vis-a-vis the Bhumandal, which is the geocentric view, is that the luminaries, the grahas, that is what are known as grahas. Grahas are these objects in the motion. That is why this whole idea of Shishumar, with the pole star at the top, everything rotating, right? Yeah, we discussed all that, right? Yeah, that's a geocentric view. Yeah, is it clear?
Yeah. And last thing, Prabhu. The moon and sun is discussed in detail. Why not the other planets like Navagrahas?
Because it's not discussed in detail in the Bhagavatam. So those things are discussed in detail in Surya Siddhanta and other works. So if you want to discuss, not discuss, if you want to learn for yourself, I haven't studied that in detail myself. On astronomy, written by the same author, Vedic cosmology, Pavaneshwar Prabhu. So you can read that book. I haven't gone into detail. I have that book. I haven't gone into the detail, but that gives much more in detail about phenomenon of eclipses, the orbits of all the planets, how the constellations move, how all the various Panchanga calculations are done. Once you understand this basic design, all other things fall into place, including months, eclipses, birth charts, all the concepts related to, astrology, astronomy. Everything will make sense.
Okay. Yeah,
But I'm not so learned in all these aspects.
just wondering because it was not discussed in Bhagavatam. That's the reason. Yeah, Prabhu.
Yeah, because it's not mentioned in detail here. I have mentioned many things which are in that book, but not in the Bhagavatam, just to give us a slightly better appreciation. Yeah, but without going into too much detail, based on whatever Pavaneshwar Prabhu has gathered, just sharing.
Yeah, it's clear. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Gantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Samaveta Gaura Bhakta.
Jai.
Thank you all very much for
Thank you, Prabhu Harish.
patiently attending and listening. So I'll see you all on Tuesday, Krishna willing, and we'll continue our Chaitanya. So we are entering a new discussion. We have completed the Ramananda Rai philosophical discussion. So now there'll be a lot of small pastimes. So those whose heads are spinning because of too much philosophy, they can come back and join the CC class where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's travels South India continue. So a lot of South Indian stories now. Many of you are in South India, so you can relate to many of these places that Lord Chaitanya is visiting, maybe some of those places. By the way, interesting, I found out, of course, not now, many years ago, that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visited Bombay also. In those days. So anyway, so all that we will discuss, what he did in Bombay. Okay, so thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank
Hare
you, Prabhu
Krishna.
Krishna.
Krishna Prabhu.
Hare
Pranam.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Yes, all in
Hare
your
Krishna
service.
Prabhuji.